Hello, and welcome to Lyla's Lullabies, where we spend time exploring with Lyla, a traveler who wanders the world at her own pace while sharing her most enriching and restorative moments with you. In tonight's story, we'll follow Lyla as she explores the storybook German city of Heidelberg. There's nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to remember. Just settle in, get comfortable, and let yourself go. We're so glad you're here. Whenever you're ready, let's begin. Lyla stepped off the train at Heidelberg Hauptbahnhof into the cool October morning, and autumn greeted her with its particular palette. The trees along the station plaza showing golden amber, rust and burgundy, leaves drifting down to collect in corners and along pathways. The air carried that distinctive autumn scent, earthy and slightly sweet, the smell of leaves beginning their decomposition, of harvest season, of the year turning toward rest. She had the whole day to explore Heidelberg, the university city that had somehow survived World War II intact, preserving its medieval and Baroque architecture, while all around it, other German cities had been destroyed and rebuilt. She'd heard it called the most romantic city in Germany, and on this autumn morning, she could already sense why. From the train station, she walked toward the Altstadt, the old town, following signs and her general sense of direction. The walk took her through residential streets that gradually became more commercial, then more historic, the buildings transforming from 19th and 20th century construction to earlier periods, each era leaving its architectural signature. The morning was quiet, not many people out yet, shops just beginning to open. A bakery was already busy, the windows steamed from warmth inside, the smell of fresh bread and pastries irresistible. Lyla went in and ordered a Käsebrötchen and a coffee in her careful German. Ein Käsebrötchen und einen Kaffee, bitte. The woman behind the counter smiled. Zum Mitnehmen. Ja, bitte. The cheese roll was still warm, the bread crusty and substantial, the cheese melted slightly. Lyla ate as she walked, the coffee warming her hands, steam rising from the small opening in the lid. The combination was exactly what she needed. Simple and satisfying, fuel for the day of walking ahead. The Neckar River appeared ahead, running through the city, and beyond it, rising dramatically, the Königstuhl mountain and perched on its slopes, Heidelberg Castle. Even from this distance, the castle was impressive, red sandstone walls and towers, partially ruined but still magnificent, dominating the skyline. She crossed the river on a modern bridge, cars passing steadily, and made her way toward the Altstadt. The old town revealed itself gradually. First, 19th century buildings, then 18th century Baroque facades, then older half-timbered structures, the history readable in the architecture, layers of time visible in the stones and wood and decorative details. The streets of the Altstadt were narrow and cobbled, winding between buildings that pressed close together, creating intimacy and shelter. Many of the buildings had been converted to shops and restaurants, but they retained their historic character: carved wooden doors, painted shutters, decorative ironwork, plaques, indicating the age and original purpose of the structure. Lyla walked slowly, letting herself get pleasantly lost in the maze of streets. She found small plazas with fountains, churches with Baroque facades, courtyards visible through open archways. Each corner revealed something new: a particularly beautiful doorway, a shop window displaying handmade goods, a café with outdoor seating where a few hardy souls sat despite the autumn chill. She made her way generally toward the Marktplatz, the market square that formed the heart of the old town. When she reached it, she understood why it was the center. The space was generous and welcoming, surrounded by historic buildings, with the Heiliggeistkirche, the Church of the Holy Spirit, dominating one side, its Gothic architecture elegant against the autumn sky. The square had a few vendors setting up, preparing for the day's market, flowers and produce, crafts and baked goods, everything arranged with care. An older man was arranging apples in perfect pyramids, their red and green skins gleaming. A woman set out bouquets of late-season flowers, chrysanthemums and asters, dahlias in deep jewel tones. Lyla sat on a bench at the edge of the square, watching the morning activity. A group of students walked past, backpacks and animated conversation, clearly heading to the university. A woman walked a dachshund, the dog's short legs moving quickly to keep pace. A delivery truck arrived, and the driver began unloading boxes for one of the cafes. The church bells rang, marking the hour, 9 o'clock, their tones deep and resonant, echoing off the surrounding buildings. The sound was layered, multiple bells ringing in sequence, creating a melody that was both complex and soothing. After resting for a bit, Lyla stood and walked toward the church. Its exterior was impressive, the red sandstone weathered and beautiful, Gothic windows rising high, the tower substantial. She went inside, where the interior was surprisingly bright and open. White walls reflecting light from the tall windows, the space feeling airy despite the medieval architecture. A few people sat in pews, quiet and contemplative. The church had a peaceful atmosphere, a sense of being removed from the bustle outside, despite being in the heart of the city. Lyla walked slowly around the perimeter, looking at the architectural details, the carved stonework, the way light filtered through the windows and created patterns on the floor. When she emerged back into the square, the sun had strengthened slightly, breaking through the clouds, creating moments of bright illumination that moved across the buildings as the clouds shifted. The market was busier now, more vendors arrived, more shoppers browsing. Lyla decided it was time to make her way up to the castle. She knew there was a funicular that could take visitors up the steep hillside, but she preferred to walk when possible, to experience the approach rather than simply arriving. She found the path that led up to the castle, a steep walkway with steps, winding through the forested hillside. The climb was immediately demanding, her calves working, her breathing deepening. But the effort felt good, and every dozen steps she turned to look back, watching the view expand. The Altstadt spread below, the red roofs creating a pattern, the church towers rising above them, and beyond, the Neckar River winding through the valley, reflecting the sky. The hills on the opposite side of the river were covered in forest, the autumn colors creating a tapestry of gold and orange and red. The path wound upward through trees mostly deciduous, their leaves at peak autumn color. The sun filtered through them, creating dappled patterns on the path. Leaves crunched underfoot, and occasionally a gust of wind would send a cascade of them falling, spiraling down in lazy patterns. She passed other walkers, a family with young children, the parents encouraging them up the steep sections, an elderly couple moving slowly but steadily, clearly having done this walk many times. A jogger coming down, his pace controlled, navigating the steep descent carefully. After about 20 minutes of climbing, the castle walls appeared ahead, massive and imposing. She emerged onto a terrace, and suddenly the full structure was visible. Towers and walls, courtyards and gardens, everything built from that distinctive red sandstone that glowed in the autumn light. The castle was partially ruined, destroyed by French troops in the late 17th century, and never fully rebuilt. But the ruins were romantic and beautiful, the broken walls and roofless chambers, somehow more evocative than complete structures might have been. Lyla paid the entrance fee and began exploring. The castle was larger than she'd expected, a complex of buildings and courtyards built over centuries, each addition in the style of its era. There were Renaissance facades with elaborate decorations, Gothic windows and doorways, Baroque elements added later. She walked through courtyards where grass grew between ancient paving stones, where ivy climbed the walls, where statues stood watch over empty spaces. Some parts of the castle were roofed and restored, housing museums and exhibitions, but many areas were open to the sky, their floors covered with fallen leaves, their walls open to the weather. The views from the castle terrace were spectacular. The entire Altstadt was visible below, the river winding beside it, the valley stretching away in both directions. She could see the Alte Brücke, the old bridge, with its distinctive gate towers, spanning the Neckar. She could see the university buildings, the churches, the pattern of streets and squares that made up the medieval town plan. She found a spot on the terrace wall and sat, her legs dangling, looking out over the view. Other visitors moved around her, taking photographs, reading plaques that explained the castle's history, but everyone maintained a respectful quiet, awed by the combination of history and beauty. A light breeze moved across the terrace carrying the scent of autumn leaves and stone warmed by sun. Clouds continued their procession across the sky, creating that ever-changing play of light and shadow on the landscape below. Lyla remained there for a long time, feeling peaceful and curious about the history this place represented. The castle had witnessed centuries of events, medieval princes living here, Renaissance scholars visiting, the devastation of war, the slow decay of abandonment, and then the modern appreciation of ruins, the decision to preserve rather than fully restore, to let history show its scars. Eventually, she stood and continued exploring the castle grounds. She visited the Heidelberg tun, an enormous wine barrel in the castle cellar, so large it was almost comical, thousands of liters capacity, a monument to the region's wine culture. She walked through the apothecary museum, seeing centuries-old remedies and equipment, the evolution of pharmaceutical practice displayed in glass cases. She explored the castle gardens, the Hortus Palatinus, which had once been among the most elaborate in Europe, but now existed mostly as terraces and stone structures, the original plantings long gone, but the framework still impressive, speaking to the ambition of those who'd created it. By the time she'd seen the castle thoroughly, it was early afternoon, and she was ready for lunch. She walked back down the hill, taking a different path this time, one that wound more gradually, offering different views of the town and valley. Back in the Altstadt, she found a small restaurant on a quiet side street, its entrance marked by a simple wooden sign. Inside it was traditional and welcoming, wooden tables and benches, exposed beams on the ceiling, copper pots hanging on the walls. The menu was written in Gothic script on a chalkboard, offering traditional German dishes. She ordered Maultaschen, Swabian-filled pasta, like large ravioli, with onions and butter and a glass of local wine. The waiter, an older man with a friendly demeanor, approved of her choice. Sehr gut. The Maultaschen are made fresh here every morning, and the wine is from a vineyard just up the valley. The food arrived and it was delicious. The pasta pockets filled with meat and spinach, the onions caramelized and sweet, the butter rich, everything simple but perfectly executed. The wine was crisp and slightly fruity, complementing the food well. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, watching the street through the window. A few people passed, locals mostly, going about their daily routines. A cat sat in a window across the street, cleaning its paws in the sun. An elderly woman swept the sidewalk in front of her shop, her movements rhythmic and practiced. After lunch, Lyla walked toward the Alte Brücke, the old bridge that was one of Heidelberg's most famous landmarks. The walk took her through more of the Altstadt's winding streets, past the university buildings where students sat on steps or gathered in small groups, discussing classes or making plans. The Alte Brücke appeared ahead, spanning the Neckar with 9 arches, built from the same red sandstone as the castle. The bridge was pedestrian only, creating a peaceful space above the river, and Lyla walked out onto it, joining others who were strolling or standing to admire the view. The bridge had distinctive features: 2 gate towers at the southern end, Baroque in style, marking the entrance to the old town. A statue of the bridge monkey, a bronze sculpture that legend said touching would bring good luck and a return to Heidelberg. And carved stones marking historic flood levels, showing how high the water had risen in different years. Lyla walked to the middle of the bridge and leaned on the stone railing, looking up and down the river. Upstream the valley narrowed, hills pressing close on both sides, the river winding between them. Downstream, it opened up, the water wider, the valley more spacious. Above, the castle was visible on its hillside perch, the ruins dramatic against the autumn sky. Below, the river flowed steadily, its surface reflecting the clouds and the trees along its banks. A tour boat passed under the bridge, passengers on its deck waving up at the people above. The bridge was peaceful despite the steady stream of visitors. Everyone seemed to slow down here, to pause and look, to appreciate the view and the history. Couples stood together, looking out at the water. Tourists took selfies with the castle in the background. An artist sat sketching, his pad balanced on his knee, capturing the scene in charcoal. Lyla remained on the bridge for a long time, feeling no need to rush. The autumn light was beautiful, that slanted afternoon sun creating long shadows, painting everything in warm tones. Leaves drifted down from trees along the riverbank, landing on the water and floating away downstream. A student approached her, a young woman with a clipboard. Entschuldigung, she said politely. I'm doing a survey for the university. Could I ask you a few questions? Of course, Lyla said. The questions were about tourism and how visitors experienced Heidelberg, what they valued most, how the city could balance preservation and modern needs. Lyla answered thoughtfully, talking about the beauty of the old town, the importance of maintaining the historic character, the way Heidelberg felt alive, rather than being a museum. Thank you, the student said when they finished. You've given very thoughtful answers. Enjoy the rest of your visit. After leaving the bridge, Lyla walked along the Philosophenweg, the Philosopher's Way, a path on the northern side of the river that offered famous views of the old town and castle. To reach it, She had to cross back over the river and climb another hillside, but the effort was worth it. The path ran along the hillside above the river, through gardens and vineyards, offering constantly changing views as it wound along the contour of the slope. The autumn colors were even more dramatic here, the trees brilliantly gold and red, and the views across to the castle and old town were postcard perfect. The path was peaceful, less crowded than the bridge or the old town, mostly locals out for their afternoon walks. A few people jogged past. An elderly man walked slowly with two small dogs. A couple sat on a bench, sharing something from a thermos, enjoying the view. Lyla walked the length of the Philosophenweg, taking her time, stopping at every viewpoint. The light continued to change as the afternoon progressed, the sun lowering, the shadows lengthening, the quality becoming more golden, more dramatic. She could see why philosophers and scholars had favored this path. There was something about the combination of movement and stillness, of being above the town but still connected to it, of the natural beauty and the human creation visible together, that invited contemplation and thought. By the time she descended back to the old town, the late afternoon was shifting toward evening. The shops were still open, but the energy had changed, people moving more slowly, the day winding down. Lyla walked back through the Altstadt, taking different streets than before, seeing new corners and hidden courtyards. She found herself on the Hauptstraße, the main street of the old town, which was pedestrian only and lined with shops and cafes. The street was busier here, students and tourists mixing with locals, everyone out enjoying the mild autumn evening. She stopped at a café and ordered a piece of Schwarzwälder Kirschtorte, Black Forest cake, and a coffee. The cake was rich and indulgent, layers of chocolate sponge and cherries and cream, more elaborate than anything she'd eaten earlier but perfect for the late afternoon. She sat at a small table by the window, eating her cake slowly, watching people pass on the street. The university was clearly a dominant force in Heidelberg. Students were everywhere, their energy and youth giving the old town a vitality that kept it from feeling like a museum. Two students at the next table were having an animated discussion in German, something about philosophy, their voices passionate and engaged. An older professor type sat alone, reading a book and making notes in the margins, completely absorbed. The cafe had that intellectual atmosphere that university towns cultivated, a sense that ideas mattered, that learning was valued. As evening approached properly, the streetlights began to come on, creating pools of warm light along the Hauptstraße. The old buildings glowed, their facades illuminated, the architectural details visible in new ways. The castle, high above, was lit as well, its ruins dramatic against the darkening sky. Lyla finished her cake and coffee and stepped back outside. The air had cooled considerably with the setting sun, and she was glad for her jacket. She walked back toward the Neckar, wanting to see the river in the evening light. The Alte Brücke was beautiful at twilight, its arches reflected in the water, its gate towers litter. The river was darker now, mysterious, the reflections of lights creating patterns on its surface. A few people were still on the bridge, couples mostly, enjoying the romantic atmosphere. Lyla walked out onto the bridge once more, stopping at the same spot where she'd stood earlier. The view had transformed. The castle glowed golden against the deep blue sky. The old town's lights created a warm tapestry below. The river reflected it all, doubling the beauty. She stood there as twilight deepened toward night, watching the scene, feeling grateful for the day. Heidelberg had revealed itself slowly, generously, offering its history and beauty without demanding anything in return. The autumn setting had been perfect, the colors and light enhancing everything, the cool air invigorating rather than uncomfortable. She thought about the layers of history the city represented: medieval foundations, Renaissance elaborations, Baroque additions, the destruction of war, the preservation and restoration of the modern era. All of it visible in the stones and streets, in the architecture and layout, in the way the city functioned both as a living place and a repository of the past. The bells of Heiliggeistkirche rang again, marking the evening hour, their sound carrying across the water, echoing off the hillsides. Other church bells joined in, creating a layered music that filled the valley, ancient and continuous, marking time as it had for centuries. When full darkness finally settled, Lyla walked slowly back through the old town toward the train station. The streets were quieter now, restaurants opening for dinner, people heading home or out for the evening. The cobblestones gleamed slightly in the streetlight, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. She passed the Marktplatz once more, now empty of vendors but still beautiful, the church's facade illuminated, the surrounding buildings glowing. She passed the street where she'd had lunch, the restaurant's windows warm and inviting. She passed university buildings where lights still burned in some windows, students and scholars continuing their work. The walk back to the station took her through the transition zones again, the old town giving way gradually to newer construction, the medieval and Baroque replaced by 19th and 20th century buildings. But even these newer areas had character, had been designed with care and attention to beauty. At the station, she had time before her train, so she found a bench on the platform and sat, her small bag beside her, reviewing the day in her mind, the climb to the castle, and the spectacular views, the peaceful bridge and the philosophical path. The autumn colors everywhere, leaves falling and crunching underfoot, the taste of Maultaschen and black forest cake, the sound of church bells and student conversations, the feeling of history present but not overwhelming, the past and present coexisting comfortably. Her train arrived, and she boarded, finding a window seat. As the train pulled out of the station, she watched Heidelberg recede. The castle on its hill, the old town lights, the river reflecting them all, the whole scene like something from a fairy tale, beautiful and somehow timeless, a place where history hadn't been buried but remained visible and valued, where the past enhanced the present rather than constraining it. The train carried her away into the night, but the images remained: autumn leaves against red sandstone, the Neckar flowing steadily through its valley, the bridge connecting both sides, the castle ruins romantic against the sky, Heidelberg in October, peaceful and curious, and steeped in history, offering its gifts freely to anyone willing to walk its streets and climb its hills, and pause to look and listen and appreciate.